Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Once again, my name is Dr. Emmanuel Ogbodo. I've been working in the UK as a specialty biomedical scientist and I'm a lecturer in biomedical science here in the United Kingdom. So I'm going to be talking to us something very, very important as usual, okay? In the past, we have looked at UCAS laboratory accreditation. So we'll look at their roles in terms of making sure that conformity is maintained, that standard is maintained. There's a regulation within the laboratory to ensure that standard is maintained. Now, there are some times you might go for interview and they may ask you a question that might look a little bit different. And that is what I want to look at today. Still in terms of laboratory accreditation, but today I'm going to be looking at it in terms of laboratory inspection. So in the laboratory inspection, of course, UCAS comes in and they will inspect the lab to make sure that they are within conformance. But do you know that there's also what we call MHRA laboratory inspection? So now, what is MHRA? So I've seen some people who have gone for an interview. So they ask them a question about what are the MHRA laboratory accreditation, or what they ask them about, have you heard about MHRA laboratory inspection? Sometimes they may ask you about MHRA laboratory guidelines. I'm going to talk about guidelines maybe in my subsequent videos, but for now I want us to look at MHRA laboratory inspection. You can also say laboratory accreditation. So now, what does it mean? What is MHRA? So when we talk about MHRA, what we are actually looking at, M means medicine, H means healthcare, then you have product, then you have regulatory agency. So MHRA means medicine, healthcare, product, regulatory agency. So in other words, when we talk about MHRA, we're looking at this government situated organization that makes sure that anything that has to do with medicine, especially when they also look at this like blood, blood products, they also look at the equipment that are used in terms of the blood product. So to bring it into blood bank, so they look at in terms of where the blood have been donated and is it safe. They also regulate things like who can donate blood. They also regulate things like what was donated, and also they also regulate things like who can have what when it comes to blood and its product. So that's where the MHRA comes in. So before I proceed, I would like to let us know that when we talk about MHRA laboratory accreditation or laboratory inspection, we may then be looking at specifically about blood bank. UCAS accreditation talks about all the laboratory. It doesn't matter whether it is hematology or blood bank or microbiology, biochemistry, histopath, they are all under UCAS accreditation. So UCAS can accredit them. UCAS can inspect them. However, when you talk about MHRA, their inspection when it comes to the laboratory inspection, you might be looking at mostly blood bank. Because what they are going to be regulating is about how the blood bank is within confinement in terms of maybe blood and its product, who has what, is there any incident, was there any near misses and all of that. So we're going to look at that in detail. But yes, MHRA means medicine, healthcare, product, regulatory agency. Okay? And their inspection mostly is about blood bank when it comes to the laboratory. Now, in doing that, there are keywords that I would like you to get used to. Number one, you talk about GMP. GMP means good manufacturer product. Number two, GDP. GDP means good distribution practice. So what it means that under MHRA inspection, they want to make sure the manufacturing is it according to the standard. The distribution, is it according to the standard? So the only difference between GMP and GDP is the D and M, okay? But they are all good manufacturer practice or good distribution practice. So now, what MHRA is regulating is that within this, whether it's manufacturer or distribution, is it within good practice? Okay, are they within conformance? Now, let's look at the terms of the blood bank. So someone will have to come and donate the blood, and once the blood is donated, it has to be prepared in a certain way to make sure that it maintains standard. Following that, then each of these laboratory can then request this blood product from the RCI, okay, which are the reference laboratory that also has issuing side, okay. So now this very reference laboratory or NHSBT, okay, now what they would, when you request blood, they would then have to give you this blood. So when they distribute this blood, is it within conformance? Is it now? So, and also when we receive the blood, is it within conformance? And when we also give it to the patient in the individual hospitals or laboratory, is it within conformance? So that is where you can get this GMP and GDP. Once again, good manufacturer practice and good distribution practice. This talks about the minimum, standard expected from the manufacturer and from the distribution, the minimum standard they must maintain if they are going to keep their license, or if they are going to, if they want to really ensure that they maintain standard. Okay, so that is very, very important. So these are the part of the things that the MHRA will be investigating when they visit the laboratory. And of course, it can also have to do with the pharmacy as well, because they also regulate in terms of the medicine and all of that. Like in the blood bank, we issue anti-D. They're also going to regulate something like that. But I would like to focus mainly in terms of how it concerns us mainly in terms of the blood bank, like blood and yeast products, okay? Because, when we receive the blood from the issuing unit of the RCI, they will give her this blood. They also regulate the process, the chain of how this blood, is being stored, the way the blood is gotten from the donor, the storage, how did we distribute it, and so on. So MHRA look at all of this, okay? So then when we look at this product, whether it is the blood or medicine, as the case may be, but like I said, I want to focus mainly on the blood. So now, when we look at each of these products that MHRA regulate, because in talking about the standard, we need to look at number one, how consistent is the product in maintaining standard? What is the quality consistent of the product? And even though they maintain the quality, so when you are sure that the quality has been maintained, what is the consistent quality of the product? Then the next thing you look at, which is number two, would then be to make sure that the product is appropriate to their intended use. In other words, to make sure that the reason for manufacturing that product, that intention of manufacturing that product, that is appropriate, okay, and that is what that is going to be produced. Then number three, to make sure that it meets the requirement for marketing. Now let me bring it into blood bank, okay. So we have all kinds of blood products, okay, and in the blood product, we may look at something like maybe irradiated blood product. We can look at something like HLA match, which is human leukocytic antigen match blood product, okay. We look at the terms of FFP, cryoprecipitate, and all of that. The intention of producing cryo or FFP or red blood cells or platelet, the intention of producing it, was it really achieved? Is it quality? Is it within quality? And is the intention, is it maintained? Was it achieved? So these are the kind of things that MHRA look at. In other words, what you are putting in the market, have you maintained standard? The quality, is it consistent? Okay. If you have noted that it is consistent, the next thing then is that what you are producing, the intention, the original aim of producing that thing, have you achieved it? And if you have achieved it, when it comes in terms of distribution or the marketing, is it within standard as specified, as required? So these are the kind of things that you're looking at for all the product that is being produced that is being regulated by MHRA. Now, remember that we've looked at the GDP and GMP, which I said is good distribution practice or good manufacturer practice. So for you to be able to produce anything like medicine, or for you to even to be able to have access for blood donation, or to treat blood, or to prepare blood, to be able to distribute it to different laboratory, or even for you as a laboratory like each of the hospitals that has their blood bank, okay, for that laboratory to be able to function, to have a blood bank, that also requires certain level of standard. And because of that, this is where this GDP and GMP comes in. So people who have to maintain this GDP and GMP must be, number one, they must hold manufacturer license for the ones who are manufacturing the product. Number two, they must hold wholesale dealers license For the ones who are looking at, in terms of after it's been manufactured, they take it in wholesale and they deal with it and distribute it. Then number 3, they must hold blood establishment authorization, and this is where the blood bank comes in. Then number 4, non-UK site. There are some sites that may not be within the UK because MHRA is a UK regulatory agency. So there may be some sites that is not in the United Kingdom. Even though it is not in the United Kingdom, if those sites, irrespective of where they are being regulated by marketing authorization within the UK, those people also need to maintain, also make sure that they hold the license. So number 4 has to do then with the non-UK sites employed by UK marketing authorization holders. So those ones again are being regulated. They are bound, even though they are outside the United Kingdom, they are bound to make sure that they maintain the standard as stipulated by MHRA. Now let us look at MHRA inspection. Okay, because that's actually the main thing I really want to talk about. So let us look at the MHRA inspection. Remember that similarly with the UCAS, MHRA also want to make sure that the standard has been maintained within the laboratory. That everything that the laboratory say they are doing, everything on paper that they say they are doing, that is actually what they are doing. And remember that in doing that, then MHRA will be looking at a lot of things. They are going to look at personnel. They are going to look at qualification. They are going to look at documentation, as we had already discussed in the UCAS laboratory accreditation. So they're going to check a lot of things. Number 1, they're going to make sure that the manufacturer and the distribution site are within GDP and GMP, like we've mentioned. So where the blood is being produced, like where the blood are being donated and where the blood are being treated and to be distributed to different laboratories, is it within standard? And also even the site, like different laboratories like the hospitals, NHS hospitals, individual hospitals, okay, that receive this blood, those sites, those laboratories, are they within standard? They are one of the things they are going to be looking at. Once again, GDP has to do with the good distribution practice. GMP has to do with the good manufacturer practice. Number 2, so MHRA inspection also has to do with when someone applied to be able to either distribute a product or manufacture a certain product that is within the regulation of MHRA. So when the person make that application, MHRA will come for an inspection. Number 3. So following all of that, once the person has gotten the license, of course, then they have to then be coming periodically, maybe yearly or 2 years, as the case may be. So they have to be coming at a certain point to check. And interestingly, in some point when they want to come, they might tell you, they are going to tell you and say, we are coming so and so days and all of that. Then you can prepare for them. But sometimes if they think it's not quite, maybe if it's just a simple or a minor visit, they might just show up. But that means that laboratory need to make sure that they always operate within standard. The manufacturer, the distribution, they always each of these very sites or department need to make sure that they operate within standard, because sometimes MHRA might just show up without necessarily telling the management about their coming. So that is why it's important that this laboratory maintain standard. Okay. Now, when the MHRA inspect, when they come to the laboratory and they've done their inspection and all of that, there are so many things they are going to do. They are going to write their report, and in their reporting, they are going to be rating some certain things. So what they are going to be rating is number 1. Basically, their rating, their check, with the kind of thing they are going to be checking will be number 1, the compliance report. They want to see your compliance report. Basically, they want to see your documentation. Okay, what has been going on in the laboratory? Has there been any incident? Has it been properly documented? Has there been any near misses? Has it been properly documented? Near misses are like maybe if there's any potential mistake, if there's any mistake that has been made, although it was corrected before that happened, okay, that can be a near miss, because if you had not corrected that, of course, that would have been a serious problem. So, also in the laboratory, there's what we call TACO, transfusion associated circulatory overload, or TRALI. Any of such incidents, even like, let me just put it in general, once there is something like blood transfusion reaction, anything that happens in the laboratory that requires document, you make sure you properly document it. And these are the kind of things that the MHRA will be looking at. So they are going to be looking at a compliance report, so which has to do with your documentation. They also would like to look at something like the internal documentation showing their previous visitation or inspection. So in other words, what have you done based on the report that will give it to you previously? What have you done to make sure that in this our current visit, okay, that you have implemented it? So when they come whenever they visit, they also want to make sure that every correction that they've given to you previously, that you've also implemented it in this very current inspection. And that is where the second thing they look at, internal information about their previous inspection report. Then the next thing that will be number 3, which is organizational changes. So what changes has occurred within the department? What are the changes that have taken place, especially the changes in terms of making sure that the regulations stipulated, within this very MHRA has been is to be maintained. For example, maybe if they pick up 1 or 2 things, maybe they could correct the department about 1 or 2 things. They can make some recommendation. The recommendation may require that the hospital or the department may need more senior BMS, or it may require that they may need more BMS, or it may require that they may need more BMS trainees, whatever. As the case may be, maybe they require more staff, or they require certain kind of training and all of that. So that recommendation may prompt the lab or the department to make some organizational changes. These are also some of the things that they want to see. So I've mentioned a few things. Number 1, they want to see your compliance report, which are all these documentation like I've mentioned. Has there been any transfusion reaction? Has there been any tackle, trialing? Is there any near misses and all of that? You document it properly. Your equipment, the analyzers, the quality control, the maintenance, the calibration. You make sure that you document it properly. These are other complex reports. They really want to see that you are within conformance. Then the next thing would then be looking at what are your internal documentation in line with their previous investigation, and what have you done about it? What you've done about it, did it result to organizational changes? If yes, they also want to look at something like that. Okay? Now, what exactly does MHRA regulate? I've already mentioned it before, but I'm going to just try to itemize it. Remember that blood and its product is just one part of it. They also regulate things like medicine, like I've said. They also regulate things like equipment, okay? Use maybe in terms of the blood donation or manufacturing of medicine. They also look at things like that. But I'm going to put it for you in number. Number 1, what they regulate is number 1, you have medicines and vaccines. So they regulate medicines and vaccines. So all the vaccinations or maybe all the medicines, they regulate it. That is part of their regulation. That is MHRA. Number 2, but let me, before I continue, because when I say medicine, of course, it seems to be mainly about pharmacy, which is right. But remember that in blood bank, we issue a lot of medicinal product like anti-D. Okay, we issue anti-D, which is a medicinal product. Sometimes in some laboratory, they issue albumin, which is also a form of medicinal product. And that is why it is also important that we know about the regulation about MHRA in terms of medicinal products. So don't think it's just all about the pharmacist. Okay, now number 2, medical devices. So they look at medical devices, and that is where medical equipment comes in. What equipment are you using within your laboratory? Okay, in terms of running your blood group and antibody screening, or maybe like what equipment are you using in terms of the fridge that you use in terms of storing the red blood cells, or maybe the freezers for storing the FFP and cryo, or maybe the platelet agitator for storing the platelet and all of every equipment within the blood bank or within the laboratory that that is being used with this very blood product. These are also some of the things they want to look at. But again, remember, it doesn't have to be within the laboratory as well. There has to be maybe in terms of the equipment used in manufacturing the anti-D, or maybe manufacturing other medicinal product. But I keep bringing us back to blood bank because that is how it kind of concerns us mainly. Okay. Then number 3, they also look at blood component. So they look at red blood cell. They look at platelets, they look at FFP, they look at cryoprecipitate. So they want to look at each of these very products. How are they being produced? How are they being distributed? How are they being stored? Who has what? These are the part of the thing that they look at. Okay, so blood component. Then number 4, they also regulate e-cigarette, okay, but I'm not going to mention much about that because that is not really directly to us. Then number 5, they also regulate something like traditional herbal, like some of this herbal medicine, they also regulate it. So in this herbal medicine, and also some medicine that maybe has to do with someone's religious belief, they also regulate things like that. But anyway, that is not really our area of concern. Our area of concern is in terms of medical devices, like the analyzer that we use within the laboratory, within the blood bank to run our samples, or maybe the fridges or the freezers that we use to store the red cells in terms of the fridge, or freezer in terms of the FFP and cryo, and blended agitator, or even the defroster that we use for defrosting defrosting the FFP and cryo precipitate. They regulate all those medical devices and of course other medical devices. Okay. What then could trigger inspection? Now, remember I told you guys that sometimes that they may tell you that they are coming, and sometimes they may not really say it. There are so many things that could trigger to inspection. For example, if somebody reports that this laboratory, they are not within conformance, they are not maintaining standard, they can pay you guys a surprise visit, to really confirm what a whistleblower has said, regarding that very laboratory. So there are a lot of things that can trigger inspection, MHRA inspection in the laboratory. Number one, when there's a perception that the laboratory has breached, the standard of GMP or GDP, or maybe if there's any report from a whistleblower saying that this laboratory has not been within conformance, that can trigger them to come and pay that very laboratory a surprise visit. Okay, now when they do that, there's a lot of things they're going to be doing, as we have already previously mentioned, even as also seen in UCAS. Number one, they will interview relevant personnel. They may interview the managers, they may interview the staffs and so on. So they're going to look at around, they will also interview the relevant personnel regarding to that report they've gotten, either from the whistleblower or in any form which they got that very information that the laboratory is not within conformance. They are breaching the GDP or GMP, practice. They also go to review documents. They want to see that the document within the laboratory, that everything is properly documented, people's training are properly documented, and their people are properly trained. They're also going to look at people's qualification and all of that, as we've mentioned in terms of the UCAS. They're also going to look at things like that, because remember that when you are inspecting the laboratory, when they are inspecting the laboratory, it's not just about the environment. Personnel that does the work also has a lot to say, because if you have a wrong personnel, or irrespective of all your structures, you're not going to get the overall standard that you are expecting. Okay, they're going to review documents. Okay, which also include people qualification, training, and so on. Of course, you want that trigger that yes, maybe there is a problem within this particular laboratory, they don't maintain standard. Of course, that would make them to come and pay you guys a visit. And that is the part of the things that they will do. So these are the things that can trigger MHRA inspection in the laboratory. Now, let's talk about what happens when they come to the site. There are many things that can happen when they come to the site. They are going to check a lot of things. They are going to check, in terms of if it is where there's a manufacturing going on, they're going to check the manufacturing, the distribution. They're going to check the whole environment as associated to that, whatever thing that they are regulating, as we have mentioned. They're going to check to make sure that everything is within standard. Okay. Now, once they finish checking that, in that their site visit, there are other things they are going to be doing. They're going to look at manufacturer areas. They're going to look at the quality of the laboratory. They're going to look at the quality control of the laboratory. So you need to show evidence that you'll be running quality control. You need to show evidence that you'll be doing maintenance. You need to be showing evidence that you'll be doing every necessary things that will help you to ensure that whatever thing you are doing within the laboratory is within the standard. You need to provide the evidence, either showing them on the screen, like I've said, electronically, or you also show it to them by hard copy, showing them the evidence of your proper documentation and what you do. For example, when your QC fail, or what you do when your maintenance fail, you need to show them all of that. Even all the services that has been conducted in that very analyzer, you also need to show them, how many times the engineers have visited to work on them. You need to show them those things, because, and even the reason why they had to visit, you need to show them those things, because that is how they can be able to, that will give them confidence that the laboratory is within conformance, okay, or are maintaining conformance. They're going to look at the stock and stock management. How do you maintain your stock? How do you manage your stock? Okay, so in terms of the blood bank, how do you manage your card grouping? How do you manage your card grouping card? How do you manage something like your antibody screen IgG card? How do you manage every reagent that you use within the laboratory? How do you manage the stock? Okay, so even your control, how do you manage it? So they're going to look at all of those things. Do you have evidence to show that you know when your stock is about to finish? And when do you order them? So they're going to look at this like that. For example, if you go to some laboratory, they have inventory of everything that they use in the laboratory. So they know what they have received, and they also know how many is left. That can help them to know when to order more. That means in between the weeks and days, that means someone need to be taking the stock of what has been used, what has been left. That can then help to know when to order what, so that we don't need to order something when it has completely finished. So you don't want that to happen. You want to make sure that as things are finishing, that you are ordering them. That way the laboratory can flow or run without any obstruction. Anyway, that's where stock management comes in. So they're going to inspect that. They're also going to look at something like the storage area. Where do you store your product? If it is something that is stored in the fridge, they want to look at the fridge. If it is something that is stored in the freezer, they want to look at the freezer. So they're going to look at all your storage area to make sure that it is within conformance. They are going to look at your temperature monitoring, and of course this is very, very important in blood bank. Remember that the blood product, for example, like I've discussed in my previous video, something like FFP and cryo, they have a storage temperature that is different from that of the red blood cell, and that of the red blood cell has a storage temperature that is different from that of the platelet, okay, in terms of platelet. And even when cryoprecipitate or FFP is defrost, they have a different storage temperature. Anyway, because of that as well, MHRA, when they come in the site, they want to see what are your temperature monitoring like. They want to know your temperature. How do you monitor your temperature? There's something I said on my previous video. I said even though that the red blood cell, the temperature storage is between 2 to 8 or between 2 to 6, okay? Depending. When we get a temperature monitoring, we're going to make it in such a way that we're not going to wait until it is close to 6 or it is close to 2 before the alarm will start going off. So we'll start making sure that as soon as it's going to like maybe 3.5 or 4 point something, the alarm will start going off. That way you start thinking about what to do before it actually go out of range. So that has to be temperature monitoring. So MHRA would like to see, how do you monitor the temperature? How do you know when your temperature is high or low or normal? So they are very, very important. They are the kind of things they are going to be looking at, okay? So they want to see the kind of materials or the software they use to monitor the temperature within the laboratory. Then another thing they will look at, they want to look at in terms of the purchasing and sales function. How do you purchase what you purchase? But in terms of the blood bank, how do you order blood? What are your criteria of ordering blood, and of course your storage and all of that. So they're going to look at the ordering things like purchasing things or selling things. But in terms of the selling, it's not really something that has to do with the blood bank anyway. But in terms of purchasing, we can liken it to maybe when we order platelet, when we order red blood cell, when we order FFP or cryo from the Arussia, the reference laboratory, or the NHSBT. So when we order something from there, can be akin to like maybe purchasing something. They want to see, how do you do that? So here in the United Kingdom, we when it comes to ordering blood product, we use what we call OBOS, okay? That is what we use, NHSB OBOS, to be able to order the blood, okay, or any product that is required. They want to see that. And also they maybe want to see how people are being trained before they can be able to use that. They also want to look at transportation arrangement. For example, if you want to issue blood, or even when you want to transfer, a patient is to be transferred from one hospital to another hospital, and that patient is going to be, the person will be taking blood, the person will be transfused red blood cells while the person is being taken to that hospital. What are the arrangement like? Or maybe you've issued a blood that can go to another site, another hospital. What is your transportation arrangement like? How do you package the blood? They are going to look at all of those things. They are the part of the things they are going to be looking at. So your transportation arrangement also plays a vital role when they come for your inspection, okay? Then the next thing, they may decide, after they've checked all of this, they may decide to ask you about any additional, documentation they may feel it is necessary that you're supposed to have. That is why any documentation they think that is necessary, they're going to ask you to provide it. And that is why, because you don't really know of course, there are obvious things they can ask you, but there may be some things that you don't really know they may ask you. That's why you need to make sure that everything that you are doing within the laboratory is within the standard as stipulated by this very MHRA. Of course, when it comes to MHRA inspection. Following that, after they've done all of this, they are going to give their feedback. Their feedback will then determine whether you guys have passed their inspection, or maybe there's something that needs to be corrected or that you may need to do. So of course, their feedback will tell you what to do, whether you've done well or you've not done well. If you've not done well, they're going to tell you the area that you might need to improve on. So their feedback could be something like, it could be critical. If there's any problem, if they think you've not done well, their feedback could be very critical, showing you've not really maintained standard at all. Or it could also be major. Also, something like critical or major is not very good. And of course, depending on the condition, they may even decide to suspend the license of the laboratory or the manufacturer, as the case may be. But of course, if you've done well, they will tell you that you've done well, and if there is any minor correction, they will also give it to you. So what am I trying to say in summary? It is important that you know that in addition to UCAS laboratory accreditation, which can occur in every department, whether it is microbiology, histopathology, blood bank, that can happen. That is generally laboratory. But there are also some other regulatory agencies that may focus in subunits of the laboratory. For example, we talk about hematology, or we talk about something like, more specifically, blood transfusion. MHRA always inspects blood transfusion. You can also have, so if you go for interview, they ask you about MHRA inspection or MHRA laboratory accreditation. What they really want you to focus on, or what they really want to know, do you understand that this MHRA, in addition to UCAS laboratory accreditation, that this MHRA, they also regulate blood transfusion. They can also give accreditation. They can also either suspend or maybe give license for a particular hospital to have a blood transfusion laboratory. So that is very, very important. So MHRA inspection or accreditation focus mainly when it talks about blood transfusion, and it is very, very important that you know that. So when you go for your interview, when they ask you about MHRA inspection or accreditation, just know that it is the same thing as UCAS. The only difference is that this one focuses mainly on blood bank, and then you need to know what they are all about. You know about the medicine, healthcare, product regulatory agency. So meaning that they regulate things like medicine, blood product, medical devices, and all of that. So then if they come to the laboratory, like I've said, these are the things, the area they're going to be looking at. So here you go. In addition to your UCAS laboratory accreditation, when you hear about MHRA accreditation or inspection, this is what it's talking about. It's mostly talking about blood transfusion. The thing I must tell you is this: many people don't know about this. Why many people don't know about this? That when it comes to UCAS laboratory accreditation, maybe the whole laboratory may be going through that accreditation. But when it comes to something like MHRA inspection or accreditation, depending on how you want to put it, okay, it's just that one blood bank, that blood transfusion blood bank, your blood transfusion laboratory that will be going through the inspection. Biochemistry is not going through the inspection. Microbiology is not going through the inspection. And because of that, many people may not know about it. So yes, there is MHRA accreditation or inspection. So if you go for your interview, they ask you that, here you go. Next time, I'm going to try to make video. Continuing here, I'm going to look at MHRA guidelines. Remember that because they inspect blood transfusion, they put up a lot of guidelines. Some of you have gone for an interview, they ask you about which guidelines do you know in blood bank. There are a lot of MHRA guidelines. Some of you have gone for an interview, they've asked you something like, what are the MHRA guidelines? There's a lot of guidelines that this MHRA put in place to make sure that the blood bank, they run within standard. Once again, my name is Dr. Emmanuel Ogbodo. Here you go. Thank you for listening. Please, can I ask you to like, share, and subscribe? Thank you very much till I come back your way again. Bye-bye.